Hey everybody,
Awesome.
welcome to May's Automation is a Simple gathering. Please mute unless you're intending on speaking. Thank you for being on time. Please note that this gathering is being recorded and the video will be made available to watch later. I'm Dave Hunt, an engineering manager for the Firefox performance testing team. These gatherings started as a way for me to keep up with the latest projects and practices. The format's a monthly gathering with guests to talk about a project they're working on or a passion of theirs. We have the Automationeers channel on IRC or Slack. These can be used for sharing resources and also for discussion and any questions. I'll be monitoring these in case anybody wants to put anything in text and doesn't want to speak. So I try to schedule these meetings every month. The time and date varies depending on the availability of our guest. Next month, Mozilla has an all hands, so we're going to be skipping June. There's currently no guests on the schedule for July onwards, so if you are interested in being a guest, please let me know, or if there's a guest you'd like me to reach out to or a topic you're interested in, please do get in touch. As usual, we may not use up the full hour, and there should be some time for questions towards the end. So if you've just joined us, I'd like to remind you to please mute and note once more this event is being recorded. So back in October, David Burns suggested I reach out to today's guests to see if they might be interested in sharing more about their project. So since scheduling this back in January, I'm now very excited to finally be able to introduce Brendyn Alexander and Jansen from Microsoft, who will be talking about how to optimize with Webhint. Brendyn and John are joining us from Seattle, where it's a busy time finishing up Microsoft's Build conference, so I really appreciate them giving up their time to be with us. So with that, over to you, Brendyn and John.
Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, it's exciting to be here. Thanks for having us. So I'm Brendyn Alexander. I'm the PM lead on Webhint.
And I'm John Jansen. I am the engineering lead on Webhint and PWAs.
And John is going to be here to help answer some of the more technical questions, and I'm going to dive into an overview of Webhint. So Webhint, as the slide says, is a tool that we've authored to help web developers develop, debug, and deliver optimized and bug-free sites and web apps. If you want to get in touch with either of us, we have our Twitter handles here, so please feel free to reach out. If you dive into Webhint and start using it and you find bugs or have feature requests, we also have everything on GitHub, so you're welcome to log requests there, but we're happy to do that for you if you reach out to us. So that, I'm going to dive in. So quick overview of our agenda today. So we're going to give you an overview of what Webhint is, just dive a little bit into why we created this and what are the main aspects of it. We're going to take a look at how it integrates into the web developer workflow, including looking at VS Code integration, interface, browser developer tools integration, CI/CD integration, and the online scanner that we have available. We'll take a look at the amount of documentation that's out there. It's an awesome educational tool that you can use to learn a lot about all of the suggestions and tips that Webhint provides. And then we'll take a look at the end. We'll wrap up by looking at the top backlog items that we have going forward. So just a reminder, please feel free to ask questions at any time. We're happy to field those. We'll also, as David mentioned, leave some time at the end to answer any questions you might have. Okay, so what is Webhint? In short, it's a community-driven best practices tool for the web. It provides open and consistent tools, and the goal here is to make web developers more productive by catching bugs before they happen in various stages of the web developer workflow. If you want to go dive in yourself, you can check out the website, which is webhint.io. So let's take it out of the 30,000 foot view there and dive one layer deeper here. So it's a one-stop resource tool, and the goal is to help web devs build cleaner, meaning avoid common engineering pitfalls that might become traps or problems later, more secure, and more interoperable websites and apps. It's a tool that we've used ourselves to optimize within Microsoft and even our own Webhint site, the quality across a number of key fundamentals. So there's a track record since we launched it 2 years ago of this having not only internal value for us, but us hearing from the community that we're serving that it's having value in helping them build better websites. It's a product that was started within Microsoft, but we've now contributed to the OpenJS Foundation, and it is community driven. We are the largest contributors to it, but we also have a number of people who are helping us advance it. And it's highly customizable. Not only does it show up in every part of the web developer workflow, but it is also configurable, particularly with the command line interface. So regardless of whether you're targeting internal sites, or you're trying to create a third-party service, or you're trying to make your enterprise sites work, it's designed to be configurable and customizable to suit your task at hand. So why did we design Webhint and why did we build it? Let's take a look at TypeScript and all the different options that the TypeScript compiler provides. This is a complex set of options that for any web dev is kind of a nightmare when you try to dive in and think about how you should best configure just one tool within the web developer workflow. And this complexity exists across dozens of tools that web developers have to use out there. So literally taming the wild, wild web is kind of a nightmare for anybody, especially beginners, but even for seasoned web engineers. Knowing how to configure things to get the best experience for your needs is often a headache. And we thought there was a lot of room for simplicity to sort of tame this complexity. So really quick, what are the different ways available to use Webhint? We're going to give a little bit of a textual overview, but we're also going to dive into a bunch of demos followed by that. So we have, as mentioned, a code extension. We have live site analysis available at https://webhint.io. We have browser extensions, some that we're going to demo now and that we're in active development on, but they will work for Chrome, for Firefox, and for Edge. We also have a node-based command line utility. They help you get insights into problems that your products are having. So for instance, whether it's performance, accessibility, PWA readiness, security, compatibility, how to set up your development environment to be most productive, or how to avoid common pitfalls that again might become problems for you later in the execution of building and shipping your website. There's a number of key aspects that Webhint focuses on to help ensure that what you ship is inclusive and works great. So here are some advantages of Webhint. Again, it's customizable to your needs. As a broad user base, we have the website, webhint.io, with the documentation and the scanner, which makes it really easy without any setup to go plug in your URL and get results. The command line utility, if you're a power user, you want to do automation with Webhint, you want to block builds, for instance, on achieving certain quality bars across those 7 areas we talked about, that's available. There are browser developer tools, so in the flow of designing, developing, debugging, delivering, when you're working within the browser, it plugs right into those tools and that experience. And then again, it's also possible to integrate it into the CI and build process as a package, so meant to streamline the DevOps process. And throughout all of that, what Webhint does is it reports bugs that it finds and the impact of those bugs and links you off to guidance to help you understand why this is an issue that it found and how to fix it. So ultimately, it's not only a testing tool, it's an up-to-date education tool that is meant to help you keep up with the rapidly evolving pace of the web to make sure over time, as the chaos of the web never really subsides, that you can keep up with it and keep shipping great websites. So let's take a look at how Webhint integrates into the web dev workflow. We'll start with the coding phase of development. There are 2 ways, as we mentioned, that integrates. The first is the VS Code extension, and the second is the command line utility. So we'll play a quick video here of Webhint working in VS Code, and I'll provide a little bit of narration. So Webhint inside VS Code is static analysis. What it does is it takes a look at things like your HTML templates, and it suggests any mistakes that are being made, missing meta tags, elements that shouldn't be there, and it treats it just like you would expect grammatical and spelling errors would show up in your document authoring experiences, like bugs that it surfaces inline in a drawer, and as you fix them, it clears that up so you know when you've fixed all the errors. It covers accessibility, it covers browser targeting and configuration, but it statically analyzes everything that you have running locally, and not just HTML pages, but also it will do TypeScript configuration, Webpack configuration, and a number of other utilities. And again, it is customizable, so if something is missing, you can add your own rules, and those can be tested as well. You can go find this extension currently. It's published out, it's in preview, but you can go to the Visual Studio Code extension store linked here and download it. Please provide us feedback if you have it, if you run into bugs, if there are features missing. We'd love to hear from you and keep working on this product to make the best it can be. So next up is the CLI. So here's a GIF of it running, but just to prove that this is indeed not vaporware, I'm going to exit out of here really quick, and I'm going to show it running on my local machine. So I've gone through the work of going out to the NPM site here. It's currently available. We get about almost 900 downloads every week on this. You can install it here per the instructions. And once it's installed, it's registered as a command line utility called hint. You type in hint and the URL that you want to scan. Now, it's going to pop up a warning at us right now because I don't have a configuration specified, but don't worry, you don't have to have one. It will just use the default configuration if you don't create a custom one. So what it goes out and downloads the URL that you pointed at. It runs it through all the different rules that it has available in the default configuration. And once it's done doing that analysis, oops, I didn't even know that was going to happen. I love a good live demo. Please do opt in to provide feedback, just to call that out. It will spit out all of the errors that it found across all the different categories. So here you can see there are SSL errors, there are HTTP compression errors, there are cache configuration changes that we can make to make the site that we typed in better. Now, this is the basic formatter that just prints out to the console. You can also render out to HTML pages, as you can see here. It can export to Excel. There are a number of different ways you can format the results. I'll jump back in now to show some of the configuration options that exist for the command line utility. As mentioned, you can choose to specify a different formatter. You can choose to specify which hint you want it to run. You can have it watch certain files so that it actually will re-trigger runs and rescan for you. And if there are any features missing from here, we'd love to hear, especially as you dive in and do more automation and testing with this. Here's an example, speaking of a configuration, of what a config file looks like. A connector is the component of the architecture that will actually go out and render the website in order to test it. The formatters, as I mentioned, Excel was one option here, are what the output of the scan and the hint analysis will be produced to. Summary is just a basic table. Excel, as again mentioned, will print out to an Excel file. If there are certain URLs, for instance, say you have files loaded from third parties from a CDN that you want ignored, you can specify those so that the quality of some third-party product that you ultimately have no control over doesn't impact the hints that are exposed to you. You can come and configure the browsers that you actually want to target. For instance, you can say, I want to target Firefox, the last 2 versions. And then you can configure all of the hints that you want it to run. Let's say, for instance, that you're not building a PWA. You can choose not to have it run PWA hints and just focus on the aspects of your website or app that are important and relevant to what you're building. Okay, so that's the coding phase. Again, there's a VS Code extension and a command line interface. Let's take a look now at the testing and debugging loop. So we actually, as mentioned, currently have support for extensions for browser developer tools. I'm going to jump out again. Let's go with the crowd favorite here to start with. So all of these, just to caveat, are currently in development. We're planning to ship them very soon. You can actually go out to our GitHub issue where we are tracking this work and sideload the in development extension now if you'd like. Webhint, as we mentioned, is an open source product, so we do everything out in the open. But here it is running in Firefox. Now, this configuration screen actually mirrors what you would see in the configuration file that we took a look at, but it's done as a user experience to make it easier because it's integrated right inside the browser. So again, you can choose the categories that you want to have hints analyzed for. You can configure what browsers you plan to target. And then you can also ignore certain files and certain sources if those don't apply and you don't want hints for them. So we'll hit run scan. And as the scan's running, it's reloading your website and analyzing it. We pop up some nice hints and tips. So as you're waiting for it to come back, we're going to educate you a little bit on the broader web and some statistics that we are aware of so that you can understand and learn even as you're waiting. And here are the results once it's done. You have the option of not showing past hints. So if you've succeeded on a number of things and you want to clean up your UI just to the things that you want to improve, you can turn that off. We'll turn it back on for now. And then each category is broken out in a way that you can expand and collapse and dive in if you'd like into why this is an important thing to fix, but then also exactly how to fix it and where the issues are. This is the case across all of the different categories that you've selected. And you just walk through one by one and identify the things that are important to you to fix. And as you rescan, these results will update and you'll be able to scan again, for instance, if you fix something and you want to see how the results are updated based on that. As mentioned, we have this running in the new version of Edge that's based on Chromium. This is also available now if you want to go and download it. We have Canary and Dev channels available at MicrosoftEdgeInsider.com. Now this is a bit risky. This is one of our own sites, so clearly we're going to be showing that we have some work to do, which is okay. No one's perfect. But in the same way that you can run it in Firefox, you come in here, click Start Scan after configuring it. You get the same exact experience that you get in Firefox. It will be consistent across browsers. And who doesn't like to stare at an adorable narwhal while you're waiting? And just like we saw in Firefox, once the scan is done, you're presented with that same list, the same user experience, the same ability to link off and learn about why it is these hints are being suggested and what you can do about them. Okay, we'll jump back now into the presentation. So we've covered the coding phase, the testing and debugging. Now let's jump into staging, where we'll talk a little bit about, oops, sorry, that's my bad. I had a couple more slides to talk about after that demo. All right, so we took a look at the extensions in the browser. We're going to talk a little bit about where we think we can go with these extensions really quick before we move on to the CI/CD phase. So as you saw, it's a nice experience to have the hints off in a side panel and available in one sort of pane within the developer tools, but we think that there's a couple areas where we can improve the productivity. For instance, we don't believe that you should have to rescan. We'd rather pay attention to triggers that come from the platform that let us know changes have happened and respond based on those, and then integrate the hints more deeply into every single tool. So as you can see here, we have a hint right inside the Elements tool on the DOM tree that's telling you the integrity attribute is missing from the script. You should add that. Similarly, we have a hint here saying that this syntax isn't supported in all browsers, so you should be careful about using that. We can jump now to the Sources tool. We have a CSS file open. Hey, FYI, you should add the old syntax because older browsers expect that, and without it, there won't be graceful degradation or there won't be cross-browser compatibility. And lastly, we can take a look at the Network tab. Hey, we notice your content type should actually be image PNG, not image JPG. And this is surfaced right in line with the experiences that you're already using without having to go to a separate hints panel. Now you can sit at that hints panel and see all the things you need to fix, but the idea is developers already have a workflow around these existing tools, and the hints should surface at the right time in the right place to be most productive and most actionable. This is not yet built, but this is an idea of where we want to go with the browser developer tools integration. Okay, so now for real, we will look at the staging phase of the developer workflow. So we currently use the Webhint CLI to integrate with Travis and the Azure Web Apps inside of Azure. Now, this is one example of how we've chosen to integrate into the CI/CD loop, but again, there's a CLI out there which can be automated. So you can choose to integrate it into your CI/CD product just use the same npm package and the same command line utility, hook it into Jenkins, hook it into whatever CI/CD system that you use internally, that you use in the cloud, and you can automate by adding or taking advantage of the existing default rules or adding your own custom ones, and creating ultimately rules that can gate your builds out to production or to staging based on certain quality bars you want to hit that Webhint can help enforce. And lastly, we'll take a look at how you can use Webhint on your production sites. So we'll give you a quick demo of our online scanner. So if we come out and we go to webhint.io and click on the scanner tab, you can see that you're able to type in a URL. Let's be consistent here. We'll use the exact same site just to show that everything works end to end. And similar to the other tools, what's this going to do? It's going to bring you to a landing page while it asynchronously goes out and across all of the areas that we've talked about. It's going to go out and run these hints. Now you'll notice that developer setup is actually not on here because now we're in a runtime state for your site, so it doesn't make as much sense to talk about how you could configure TypeScript or how you could configure Webpack bundling, but it still covers the key aspects of your development workflow that are relevant to the runtime of your site. And as the results come, we have this asynchronous model where it's sending off some workers to go and crunch over the website. You'll get the same experience where you can learn about why this is important, that this is something to be changed, and how you can fix it. And again, you'll see this is the case across all the different areas that are supported. Very similar UI and UX. We're working on consolidating and aligning all this interface as we go, but it should be consistent and familiar with all the other experiences and places that Webhint surfaces. And instead of jumping right back into that, because we're going to go right back into a demo, the last thing we want to show here is the documentation. Now, as we mentioned, the docs actually are a key part of powering all of the other experiences throughout the web developer workflow, but the truth is they are a product as well in and of themselves. They are an awesome educational resource that you can use to learn more about why it is that we're suggesting these things and to just keep up to date with best practices in the web without even having to run a scan. So you can come and look at all the different areas, all 7 of them in this case, because again, this is just purely informational, educational. You can come learn about how to configure BabelBest, TypeScript, Webpack. We are going to be adding more and more to this over time. You can learn how to extend Webhint by creating custom connectors. Let's say you want Firefox, for instance, to be one of the target browsers that could render a site. Or if you want to create custom development flow integration, like we mentioned with your own CI and CD solutions. Or if you want to create custom formatters that aren't Excel or aren't the default summary view, but you want some presentation that you need, let's say for your CI/CD pipeline that's custom to how your team consumes build results or test results, all the documentation is out here for you to learn how to come in and extend Webhint to create custom solutions that work for you. So that's a look at the end-to-end workflow of how Webhint integrates with the coding, the testing and debugging, staging, and the production phases of development. So now let's take a look right before we wrap things up at what some of the next features are coming down the pike for Webhint and what we're focused on building in the near future. So we want to make sure within the CLI that we can support custom user actions to enable authentication. This includes dealing with authentication prompts and things of that nature to make sure that automation truly is end-to-end and accounts for all the experiences that might appear as Webhint is going out and running analysis. We also want to do template analysis, more in the VS Code style of integration. We want to make sure that we're looking at JSX, that we might be looking at common frameworks like React or Vue, and that we're actually suggesting how you can better structure those things, because we realize that we need better coverage across all the popular platforms and frameworks that exist and are being used by web developers today. We also want to invest in auto fixing. As you saw in that video, there's still the manual process of going out and typing, but the truth is there's a number of things, from how you should be lazy loading modules to adding alt attributes to removing meta tags and things of that nature, that you could realistically just clean up by clicking a button and having a number of the fixes auto applied. So we're digging deeper into how we can make that experience of responding to hints more productive. We also want to have a development mode in the browser extension to make integrating and working with the browser extension more productive. As you saw also, we want to be able to integrate the actual hints deeper into the tools to make them more of a seamless experience. And then we also want to migrate the online scanner to serverless to support more clouds. So right now it's built on Azure. And I don't know if you could tell if you have keen, sharp eyes, but it took a little bit longer for those results to come back than we're comfortable with, and we think will ultimately make web developers productive. So we want to see if we can move to a more distributed model that would let other people be able to take that online scanner and deploy it, let's say, in their own private cloud, or deploy it to other cloud solutions so that they can get Webhint's online scanning functionality at scale. And then obviously, perhaps this goes without saying, 7 categories is not necessarily all of the complexity of web development. We have 30+ proposed hints that we want to cover. We're adding some really cool ones around things like JavaScript API and CSS API compatibility, where we're integrating with services and products like MDN in order to uncover the best of platform compatibility and things of that nature, to really continue to build out the number of hints to make sure that we have broad coverage for all the challenges that web developers face every day. And if you're an expert in any particular area, again, this is open source. We will gladly take not only your ideas, but if you're up for it, your contributions as well. We have a team of engineers that's eager to help you acclimate to the code base and figure out how you can jump in and make this product better. And as a quick reminder and reiteration, this is an OpenJS Foundation project. We're excited to be working more and more in the open source community. John and I both work inside the Edge team, and as folks probably know, but if you don't, Edge is now based on Chromium, and that's another statement about our investment and excitement around open source. So OpenJS Foundation actually is the owner of Webhint. We operate out in the open on GitHub, github.com/webhint.io. And you can go check out all the things that we've talked about so far on webhint.io. So with that, are there any questions?
That was awesome. First, I'd like to say thank you for the overview and the demos. I'll jump in. I have a couple of questions, although some of which that I was jotting down you've already covered. But I guess my first curiosity is there a reason behind the narwhal?
Yeah, so yes, our first product name was called Sonar, and the idea was, that sonar helps you detect blips in the ocean and things of that nature, so you can tell when obstacles are in your path. Due to naming battles that I think we've all experienced throughout our careers, we found out there was another product named Sonar, and rather dig in there, we decided to change the name. But the mascot is so adorable that we just couldn't give it up. So Nelly the Narwhal is our mascot forever, but we're now Webhint.
Okay. I'm curious, how big is the team working on Webhint?
It's too small. Internally, so it's on my team. My team deals with Webhint and PWA in the browser, not necessarily platform features, but PWA features, as well as WebDriver, Puppeteer, and I think that's it, maybe.
Yeah.
And that's just my team with 9 people on it. So they all kind of blend in and out of each project. But I would say we have like 3 full-timers on Webhint, 1 intern, 1 vendor, and I think it should have a number more than that. So I'm trying to expand that team a bit.
We also have a couple folks out in the community that contribute occasionally. They're not full-time like John's engineers are. We're currently looking to hire a program manager to help guide the sort of end-to-end vision of Webhint, including bulking up every area of the web developer workflow that it integrates with. But as John said, we started this product with a scrappy 2-person team, and it's really proving its value. So we're really looking to bulk it up and invest more in it.
Cool. You mentioned that Webhint is also one of its purposes is for like an education tool as you have new hints. So you're suggesting that as hints will be added over time. If I've understood that correctly, I can see a situation where you might, if you're running something in continuous integration, like it passed last week and now it's failing and there's been no changes in the code itself, and it's because this new hints come in. Is that something I can imagine you may want to explicitly opt in to any new hints that come down? Is that something that's possible?
That's a great feature. I hadn't actually considered that.
The fact, though, is if you're using the CI/CD solution in the Node package, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that actually would download locally and you'd have to update the package to get any new hints.
Yeah.
So if you are automatically updating the package, then yeah, you're right. That could certainly pop some things onto your radar that you might be unaware of. And so that is certainly an interesting feature. On the other side of that is, if it's something you should be aware of, auto updating seems like a nice part of the design, because just because it's new doesn't mean it's something that maybe an organization shouldn't care about.
Yeah.
Again, it's not to take away from the good point that there should be some control mechanisms so that consistency is possible. If you're feeling eager and excited, please log that feature request out on GitHub. You take that.
The architecture supports it. It's
Yes.
just a matter of whether or not we implement a way. Like I'm imagining probably a notification system as well as a disabled until enabled option.
Yes.
I think those are really good suggestions.
You can also, through the configuration, directly specify versus using the default configuration what hints you want, and that becomes an include list versus like an exclude list. So if you specifically, state what it is you're interested in, you have to manually add a new hint to that list in order for it to be applied. But I think the feedback still stands that there should be some good workflows around keeping up to date with Webhint as it evolves.
Yeah.
I thought the DevTools integration looks awesome. Is the plan that would be permanently built in to the Chrome DevTools, or you would have to have the Webhint extension installed? Like, what's the longer term plan there?
Yeah, the idea right now is they're going to ship as extensions. We have yet to figure out the out-of-the-box plan. We obviously have control over the edge side of things, getting them out of the box, and we're engaged in conversations with our friends on your team and at Mozilla about how we can get it out of the box at within Firefox. On the Chrome side, we actually have a pretty good partnership with the Lighthouse team as well, and we're in discussions with them about how Lighthouse and Webhint play well together and whether it makes sense to include Webhint in Chromium so that all the tens of millions of Chrome web developers can utilize the power of Webhint as well. So, thinking about it in terms of circles of control and influence, we can definitely control the experience inside of Edge, and we're working our hardest to influence the experience inside of other browsers so that indeed it is included by default.
Yeah, I think that sounds awesome. And having a consistent feedback system in each of the browsers for the developers.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I was also this is my last question. In case anybody else has any questions, I'll then shut up. I'm curious if you regularly run Webhint against any popular sites. Reasoning being, I can imagine that if you have an understanding of hints that are coming up very often, that might be. It might actually steer product decisions for the browsers. Like maybe if everybody is coming up against this hint, maybe we shouldn't be hinting this, but we should be fixing it some other way in the browser or by looking at any thoughts with that?
That's really interesting. We
Yeah.
we do run it regularly against a lot of different sites. For one thing, we have telemetry, and internally I like to understand the hints that are getting hit a lot. I have not taken that extra step of saying maybe there's something we should do in the browser itself because like everybody hits this exact same hint. I think it's a really interesting feature. As I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking also about potentially surfacing the correct code rather than like potentially a browser change. Like instead of making people click on a hint and 100% of the people all get the same warning, maybe we need to surface that on MDN better, or maybe we need to surface that through other means than just the developer tools or through an extension. That's an interesting question to ponder for a while.
Yeah, I think, to get at a deeper sort of potential here, there's a lot of actionable insights that can come from the results of Webhint if you scale it up to the web in general. And that is certainly one area we're interested in. One of the reasons we want to scale up the online scanner better is so we can do more of these broad scale and over time save snapshots of runs and things like that, so that we can use that data to infer and synthesize actionable insights for the broader web. But indeed, I'm not sure we've quite thought it out that thoroughly and far along. This is one of the reasons why I'm really excited to get a program and product manager on this, so we can start to really true impact of some of these, the potential of what Webhint can do.
Yeah, I'm not a PM.
Yeah,
but there's something interesting about the other side of that as well, which I've been looking into, which is this one hint is never hit. Like this used to be a big deal, but it seems that no one on the web is ever hitting this problem anymore. And so we've been looking at it from that perspective as well, just saying maybe these can be retired.
Yeah, I think there's got to be some subtlety in this, because we want to stop short of shaming websites for where they have gaps and things like that, because we don't necessarily believe that a thing like a pass fail or some sort of mechanism that indicates true good or bad is really something we want to promote through the tool. We're, like we mentioned, more oriented around educational experiences and customization to fit what you need. Some sites could very easily ignore, for instance, any rule about adding a service worker because they have no intention of ever being a PWA. And so there will have to be some, I think, care taken to make sure whatever we publish at scale doesn't have the look of, castigating the broader web for not building things well or right. But I still think there's some actionable, productive middle ground where we can help make the web better more through the data we can get.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, does anybody else have any questions for Brendyn or John?
Okay, so that's good.
I think that's a no. Okay, fantastic. So thank you, Brendyn. Thank you, John. Thank you for everybody who's also attended. So as mentioned, there's not going to be a gathering next month, and I am looking for volunteers or requests for future guests, so please get in touch if you have any. But with that, I'd say that's a wrap, and thank you again, Brendyn and John.
Awesome. Thank you again.
Thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
Really fun.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.